The letter trembled in my hands as I stared at the return address. Who dies and remembers the family disappointment in their will? Apparently, my grandfather did. My name is Vanessa, and until today, I thought I'd made peace with being the family's black sheep. Living in a cramped studio apartment wasn't exactly the American dream, but at least it was mine. Unlike the sprawling Victorian house I'd grown up in, the one my parents had practically gifted to my golden child brother Norman and his trophy wife Annalise. Sweetie, it's what's best for everyone, Mom had said 6 months ago, her perfectly manicured hands clasped in front of her chest. Norman needs the space now that they're thinking about starting a family. I'd stood in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by boxes of memories, fighting back tears. And what about what I need? Oh, don't be dramatic. Norman had chimed in from the doorway, his designer watch glinting as he checked the time. You're barely home anyway with that little computer thing you're working on. That little computer thing is a startup, Norman. Some of us actually work for a living. Now, Dad had intervened, his voice carrying that familiar tone of disappointment. Norman has responsibilities. He's the face of our family business. A business he was running into the ground, but heaven forbid anyone mention that inconvenient truth. My phone buzzed, pulling me back to the present. It was Rocky, my business partner and the only person who'd stuck by me through everything. Did you open it yet? He asked without preamble. I'm working up to it. Girl, you've been working up to it for an hour. Just rip the Band-Aid off. I sighed, sliding my finger under the envelope's seal. What if it's just another disappointment? Like, dear Vanessa, you're still not good enough, even in death. Then we'll drink cheap wine and curse your family's name. Again. But what if it's not? The paper inside was thick, expensive. My eyes scanned the formal language until they caught on a number that made my coffee go cold in my throat. Rocky, I whispered, I think I need to sit down. You are sitting down. I need to sit down more. My grandfather, Remington Salazar, the man who'd barely acknowledged my existence at family gatherings, had left me everything. The estate, the investment portfolio, even his collection of rare books. All of it. Mine. Holy shit, Rocky breathed when I told him. How much are we talking? Enough to buy my parents' house 10 times over. My laugh sounded hysterical, even to my own ears. There's a note, too. I read it aloud. To Vanessa, the only one who reminded me of myself. They underestimated me, too. Show them what that feels like. With love, Grandpa Rem. Vanessa, Rocky's voice was gentle. You okay? Through my window, I could see the sunset painting the city in shades of gold and pink. Somewhere across town, Norman and Annalise were probably sitting in my old home, planning their perfect life in my perfect room, never giving me a second thought. You know what's funny? I said, wiping away tears I hadn't realized were falling. All those years, I thought Grandpa Rem was just like the rest of them. Turns out he was watching. He saw everything. So what are you going to do? The question hung in the air as I walked to my tiny kitchen, past the startup plans pinned to my wall, past the rejection letters from investors who thought a woman couldn't handle a tech company, past all the times my family had told me to give up and find a nice man to settle down with. First, I said, feeling something shift inside me, I'm going to build my company into everything they said it couldn't be. Then I'm going to create a foundation to help other women like me. I paused, a smile spreading across my face. And I'm not going to tell any of them about the inheritance. Not yet. That's deliciously evil, Rocky chuckled. I love it. It's not evil, I corrected, watching the last rays of sunlight fade. It's karma. And karma, as they say, is a bitch. The letter sat on my counter, a blueprint for revenge served not just cold, but with compound interest. For the first time in my life, I felt something I'd never experienced in my family's presence: power. Let them think I'm still struggling. Let them keep underestimating me. After all, that's what they'd always done best. I picked up my phone again. Rocky, call the lawyer back. Tell him I accept the inheritance, but I have one condition. Absolute discretion. It was time to show my family exactly what the disappointment could do. The lawyer's office smelled like old money and even older leather. I smoothed down my Target dress, feeling out of place among the mahogany and brass. Rocky sat beside me, his presence keeping me grounded as Mr. Patterson shuffled through the paperwork. Miss Vanessa, Patterson began, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. Before we proceed with the formal reading, there's something you should know. Your grandfather was quite explicit about his wishes. Meaning? Meaning he left specific instructions about how this inheritance should be handled. He pulled out a sealed envelope. He wanted you to read this first. My hands shook less this time as I opened it. The handwriting was sharp, decisive. Dear Vanessa, by now they've probably pushed you out of your home. Norman always was an entitled little shit, wasn't he? But you remind me of myself at your age. They called me crazy when I started my first business, said I was throwing my life away. Sound familiar? I've watched you fight, I've watched you build. Most importantly, I've watched you refuse to break. That's why you're getting everything. Not Norman, not your parents. You. Don't let them know right away. Watch them squirm first. Consider it your graduation present from a fellow black sheep. Love, Grandpa Rem. Rocky peered over my shoulder. Your grandfather was a savage. I love him already. Patterson cleared his throat. Shall we discuss the specifics? The next hour was a blur of numbers and legal terms. The estate included not just the mansion and grounds, but also a significant portfolio of tech investments, companies I'd only dreamed of working with. There's one more thing, Patterson said, pulling out a final document. Your grandfather left instructions about the family home, the one currently occupied by your brother. My stomach tightened. What about it? He bought it 6 months ago through a shell corporation. He knew what your parents were planning. Patterson's lips twitched. Technically, you now own that house too. The laugh that burst out of me was half sob, half hysteria. Are you telling me Norman and Annalise are actually my tenants? Technically, yes, though they don't know it yet. Rocky squeezed my hand. This is better than Netflix. As we left the office, my phone buzzed. Speaking of the devils, it was Annalise. Vanessa, darling. Her voice dripped artificial sweetness. We're having a little housewarming dinner tonight. You simply must come. A housewarming? It's been 6 months. Well, we've finally finished redecorating your old room. It's going to be the nursery. We thought you'd want to see what we've done with it. My old room. The one with the hand-painted constellations on the ceiling that had taken me a whole summer to perfect. The one they'd given away like it meant nothing. Actually, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was, I can't make it. I have a meeting with some investors. Oh, honey, she laughed. Still playing with your little computer project? You know, Norman says, I have to go, Annalise. The investors are waiting. Rocky raised an eyebrow as I hung up. Investors? Well, I wasn't lying. We do have a meeting. I pulled out my laptop, opening the business plan I'd been refining for months. With ourselves. It's time to make this company everything they said it couldn't be. And the house? I looked at the property deed in my hand. Let them enjoy it for now. The rent's going to go up eventually, but first... I smiled, remembering all the times they'd dismissed my dreams. First, we build an empire. Back in my apartment, I pinned the deed next to my startup plans. My phone kept buzzing with messages from Annalise, each one more passive-aggressive than the last. They're repainting your room pink. Rocky read over my shoulder. Wow, they really know how to twist the knife. They always have. I closed my laptop and stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker on. But you know what? For the first time, I'm glad they pushed me out. They thought they were taking everything from me, but they actually set me free. So, what's the plan, boss? I turned to face my best friend, feeling lighter than I had in years. First, we use Grandpa's connections to launch the company properly. Then we create that foundation for women in tech. And when we're successful enough that they can't possibly ignore us, then you drop the inheritance bomb. Then we show them exactly what the family disappointment can achieve. I picked up Grandpa's letter, running my fingers over his confident scrawl. But for now, let them think they've won. The best revenge isn't just success. It's success they never saw coming. Rocky raised an imaginary glass. To karma? I smiled, thinking of my painted stars, soon to be covered in pink paint. To karma. And to Grandpa Rem, who taught me that sometimes the best revenge takes time. 3 months after the inheritance bombshell, I stood in Grandpa Rem's mansion, my mansion now, running my fingers along the dusty bookshelves. The place still smelled like his cigars and leather-bound books. This office is bigger than my entire apartment, Rocky whistled, spinning in Grandpa's old chair. We could fit our whole dev team in here. That's exactly what we're going to do. I pulled out the blueprints I'd been working on. The East Wing will be perfect for our headquarters. High ceilings, natural light, and enough space for expansion. My phone buzzed. Another text from Mom. Sweetie, Norman's having some trouble with the family business. Could you maybe stop by? He could use your support. I showed Rocky the message. Translation: Norman's screwed up again, and they want me to witness his latest triumph over common sense. Are you going? Actually, yes. I grabbed my laptop bag, but not for the reason they think. The family business, a chain of luxury furniture stores, looked exactly as I remembered. Except now there was a sale sign in every window, and the parking lot was suspiciously empty. Norman's office door was open. He sat behind Dad's old desk, tie loosened, looking more frazzled than I'd ever seen him. The prodigal sister returns. He attempted his usual smirk, but it fell flat. Come to gloat? Mom said you wanted to see me. Right. He shuffled some papers, trying to look important. Look, I know we've had our differences, but I might have an opportunity for you, a chance to do something meaningful with your life. I bit back a laugh. I'm listening. We need someone to manage our online presence, websites and such, since you're into that sort of thing. He waved his hand dismissively. We can't pay much, but it's better than whatever you're doing now. You mean running my own tech company? Playing startup in your studio apartment isn't exactly... We just secured our first round of funding. I cut him off. $5 million. The pen he'd been fidgeting with clattered to the desk. What? You should read the business news more often, Norman. We're launching next month. I pulled out my phone, showing him our company's new website. But thanks for the offer. His face reddened. Who would invest that kind of money in your little project? People who recognize potential. I stood up, smoothing my now designer dress. Speaking of potential, how's the house? Still enjoying my old room? It's perfect, he snapped. Annalise has done wonders with it. Not that you'd understand style living in that shoebox. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Patterson. Miss Vanessa, the papers are ready for your signature. Shall we proceed with the property tax reassessment? Give me an hour, I texted back. Norman was still talking, something about family loyalty and knowing one's place. I'd heard it all before, but this time it didn't sting. This time I had Grandpa Rem's letter in my pocket and 5 million reasons to smile. I should go, I interrupted whatever lecture he was giving. My investors are waiting. Back at the mansion, Rocky had already set up our temporary office. Summer, my neighbor who'd become our lead developer, was installing monitors along one wall. How'd it go with Norman? Summer asked, untangling cables. He offered me a job managing their Facebook page. Rocky snorted coffee through his nose. Please tell me you're joking. Nope. Apparently that's his idea of helping his struggling sister. Should we tell him about the mansion? Summer gestured around the ornate office. Not yet. I opened my laptop, pulling up the property records for my old home. First, let's focus on the launch. Everything else can wait. Speaking of waiting, Rocky slid a newspaper across the desk. Your parents' country club is featuring Norman in their newsletter. Apparently he's giving a speech about family business success next week. I picked up the paper, studying my brother's smug face. Perfect timing. For what? For karma. I pulled out Grandpa's letter, reading it one more time. He wants to talk about success? Let's show him what that really looks like. Summer raised an eyebrow. What are you planning? Nothing he wouldn't do himself. I started typing an email to Patterson. Just making sure my tenants are properly registered for tax purposes. Rocky grinned. You're evil. I love it. Not evil, I corrected, remembering all the times Norman had dismissed my dreams. Just giving him exactly what he deserves, one perfectly legal document at a time. The mansion's old clock chimed 5, its sound echoing through halls that would soon be filled with young developers and dreamers. Somewhere across town, Norman was probably still sitting in his empty store, wondering where it all went wrong. Let him wonder. Some lessons are best learned the hard way. The doorbell rang at exactly the wrong moment. I was in the middle of a video call with our new investors, presenting the foundation's plans for supporting women in tech, when Annalise's shrill voice cut through the mansion's intercom. Vanessa, are you in there? The gate was open and we really need to talk. Rocky, who'd been taking notes, mouthed, "We?" and pointed to the security camera feed. Norman stood behind his wife, looking like he'd aged 5 years since I'd last seen him. "I apologize," I told the investors, "but could we take a brief recess?" "Of course," replied Sarah, our lead investor. "We're loving the foundation concept, especially the scholarship program." I found Norman and Annalise in the foyer, their expressions shifting from desperate to shocked as they took in the renovated space. Gone were Grandpa's dark curtains and hunting trophies, replaced by modern art and state-of-the-art displays showing our company's latest projects. "You work here?" Annalise stuttered. "I own here," I corrected. "We're renting the East Wing for our company headquarters." Norman's face reddened. "Since when?" "Since the owner saw potential in what we're building." I gestured to the meeting room where my laptop still displayed the investor call. "Now what's so urgent?" Annalise clutched her designer handbag, last season's model I noticed, like a shield. "We need to discuss the house." "Your house? What about it?" "The property taxes," Norman interrupted. "They've tripled. There must be some mistake." "No mistake," I said, remembering Patterson's carefully worded notice. "The property was reassessed at current market value. Didn't the management company explain?" "Management company?" Norman's voice cracked. "What management company?" "The one that owns the house." I checked my watch. "Look, I have investors waiting." "We can't afford these new rates," Annalise blurted out. "And the furniture business? We're struggling, Vanessa. We need help." Rocky appeared in the doorway, right on cue. "Sorry to interrupt, but Sarah's asking about the scholarship candidates. Tell her Kylie's presentation is ready." I turned back to my brother and his wife. "I have to go. Maybe try talking to Mom and Dad?" "We did," Norman mumbled. "They're having their own problems." Of course they were. The family business's decline wasn't exactly a secret anymore. "Please," Annalise stepped forward. "We're family. Remember all the times we included you in our plans?" I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. "You mean like when you took my room?" "That was different. We needed—" "I have a meeting to finish." I headed back toward the conference room, then paused. "But if you're interested, we're always looking for administrative assistants. Entry level, of course." The look on Norman's face was worth every second of the past 6 months. After they left, Rocky brought me a coffee. "That was cold. I'm so proud." "They're not done," I said, watching their luxury car, probably leased, crawl down the driveway. "That was just the first attempt." "Speaking of attempts," Summer called from her workstation, "Kylie's code is amazing. She's perfect for the scholarship program." Kylie was exactly the kind of candidate we'd been looking for. Brilliant, driven, and overlooked by traditional tech companies, just like I had been. "Schedule her presentation," I told Summer, "and call Patterson. I want to know exactly how much Norman and Annalise owe on that house." "Planning something?" "Planning everything." I pulled up the foundation's website, where dozens of applications from young women in tech were waiting for review. They thought kicking me out would be my end. Instead, it's going to be their beginning. Their beginning? Their beginning of understanding what it feels like to need help and not get it. I clicked through Kylie's application again. "But unlike them, we're actually going to help people." My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Norman said you have a new office. Why didn't you tell us? Family shouldn't keep secrets." The irony was almost too perfect. "Should I tell her about the house?" I asked Rocky. "Not yet," he grinned. "Let's wait until after Norman's big country club speech. You know, the one about his business success?" Summer laughed from her desk. "You two are terrible people." "No," I corrected her, thinking of all the women like Kylie who would benefit from our foundation. "We're just making sure karma does its job, one scholarship at a time." The investor call was waiting, but for a moment I stood at the window watching Norman's car disappear. They thought they were coming to beg for help from their struggling sister. Instead, they'd gotten their first taste of what it feels like to be on the other side of privilege. And this was just the beginning. The country club ballroom buzzed with anticipation as Norman adjusted his tie at the podium. I sat in the back, wearing my best poker face and a dress that cost more than his monthly mortgage payment. "Success," Norman began, his voice wavering slightly, "is a family tradition." Rocky snorted quietly beside me. "Is that what we're calling bankruptcy these days?" "Shh," I whispered, watching Mom and Dad beam proudly from their front row seats. "Let him dig his own grave. Norman continued his speech, spinning tales about innovation and market dynamics, clearly written by someone else. But halfway through, something changed. His confident facade cracked as he spotted Patterson entering the room. The key to success, Norman stumbled over his words, is understanding property. Proprietary. Patterson caught my eye and nodded, right on schedule. Speaking of property, a voice called from the audience. Is it true your stores are closing? The room fell silent. Norman tugged at his collar. We're restructuring. Another voice. What about the tax liens on your house? Mom turned around, scanning the crowd until she found me. Her eyes narrowed with suspicion, but I just sipped my champagne innocently. This wasn't my doing. Karma had its own timeline. Norman abandoned his speech notes entirely. These are private matters. Not according to public records? Someone else chimed in. Or the business newsletter that ran the story this morning. Phones started lighting up around the room as people pulled up the article. I'd seen it already. A detailed expose on the family business's decline, complete with documents showing Norman's mismanagement. Annalise rushed to the podium, whispering urgently in Norman's ear. He shook his head, face pale. If you'll excuse me, he muttered into the microphone. I'm feeling unwell. As they fled the stage, Mom made a beeline for my table. What did you do? Me? I raised an eyebrow. I'm just here to support my brother, like you always taught me. Don't play innocent. First the property taxes, now this? The property taxes? Dad joined us, looking confused. What about them? They tripled, Mom hissed, right after the house was sold to some management company. Sold? Dad's face reddened. What do you mean sold? That's our house. Actually, Patterson interrupted smoothly, appearing at my elbow, it was your house, until you transferred it to Norman, who then defaulted on payments to the new owner. New owner? Mom's voice rose an octave. Who? I stood up, straightening my dress. You know what's funny? All those years, you taught me that family takes care of family. Unless it was me needing care, of course. Vanessa, Dad started, but I held up a hand. Did you know Grandpa Rem left me everything? The mansion, his investments, and yes, through a very clever bit of legal maneuvering, Norman's house too. The color drained from both their faces. That's impossible, Mom whispered. Is it? I pulled out my phone, showing them the property records. Maybe you should have paid more attention to the disappointment of the family. Turns out I learned quite a bit about business while you were busy praising Norman. Why didn't you tell us? Dad demanded. Tell you? Like you told me about giving away my home? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Besides, I was busy building something meaningful. Right on cue, the large screens around the ballroom lit up with a news segment about our company's latest initiative, the Women in Tech Foundation, featuring interviews with our first scholarship recipients. Your little computer project? Mom's voice was faint. My multi-million-dollar tech company, I corrected. The one you said would never work. The one Norman offered to save by letting me manage his social media. Rocky stood beside me, tablet in hand. Should I show them the valuation numbers? No need. I gathered my things. They'll see it all in tomorrow's business section anyway. As we walked away, Dad called after me. Vanessa, wait, we need to talk about this. I turned back one last time. You know what's interesting? When I needed a place to live, you said family had to make sacrifices. Well, now it's Norman's turn to sacrifice. The house goes on the market next week. You can't do this, Mom pleaded. Actually, I can. But unlike you, I'm giving them notice. And unlike Norman, I'm offering them a job, if they want to earn their way like I had to. The ballroom had emptied, leaving just our small family drama playing out under crystal chandeliers. By the way, I added, you might want to check on Norman. I hear the press is waiting outside. As Rocky and I left through the side door, I heard Mom burst into tears. Part of me wanted to comfort her, but a larger part remembered all the times she'd watched me cry without lifting a finger. You okay? Rocky asked softly. Better than okay. I smiled, thinking of Kylie and the other scholarship recipients who would actually benefit from this wealth. I'm finally free. They're here again, Summer announced, watching the security feed. Norman and Annalise stood at the mansion's gate, but this time they weren't alone. Mom and Dad flanked them like backup dancers in a tragedy. All 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, Rocky muttered. Should I call security? No. I straightened my jacket. Let them in. It's time. They found me in Grandpa's office, my office now, surrounded by screens showing our company's latest achievements. Kylie was presenting her project to our development team in the next room, her voice carrying clearly through the open door. Family meeting, Dad announced, trying to sound authoritative despite his rumpled appearance. Is it? I gestured to the chairs. Or is this another attempt to fix me? We've been talking, Mom began, perching nervously on the edge of her seat, about everything. The inheritance, the company, the house. Fascinating. I turned to Kylie's presentation. Did you hear that part about the algorithm she developed? 23 years old and already revolutionizing data processing. Vanessa, please. Annalise's voice cracked. We're trying to make things right. Make things right? I spun back to face them. Like when you made things right by taking my home? Or when Norman made things right by offering me a job managing his Facebook page? That was different, Norman protested weakly. You're right, it was different. Because I actually earned everything I have. Dad leaned forward. Sweetheart, we know we made mistakes. No, I cut him off. Mistakes are accidental. You made choices. Deliberate choices to favor Norman, to dismiss me, to treat me like I was worth less. We never meant... Tell me something, I interrupted again. If Grandpa had left everything to Norman, would you be here trying to make things right with me? The silence was deafening. That's what I thought. I pulled out a folder. But since you're here, let's talk business. I have some proposals for you. Proposals? Norman's eyes lit up with hope. First, the house goes on the market next month. Non-negotiable. I held up a hand as they started to protest. But I'm offering you all jobs, with real responsibilities. Not because you're family, but because everyone deserves a chance to prove themselves. Jobs? Annalise looked horrified. Like, working for you? Exactly like that. Norman, we need someone to manage our office facilities. Dad, our shipping department needs reorganizing. Mom, our community outreach program could use your social skills. And Annalise, our HR department has an opening. Entry-level positions, Rocky added helpfully from the doorway, with standard benefits packages. This is ridiculous, Norman sputtered. We're family. Yes, we are. And family helps family, right? Isn't that what you always said? I smiled. So I'm helping you the same way you helped me, by giving you a chance to start over. By humiliating us, Mom whispered. No, by treating you exactly how you treated me. I stood up as Kylie's presentation ended to applause next door. The difference is, I'm actually offering you a way forward. And if we refuse? Dad asked. Then you refuse. The house still goes on the market and you figure out your next steps on your own, just like I had to. Annalise burst into tears. This isn't fair. Fair? I laughed. Was it fair when you redecorated my room without even asking? When you treated me like a failure for daring to build something of my own? We were wrong, Norman said quietly, surprising everyone. About everything. About you. I know. I softened slightly. That's why I'm offering you these jobs. Not because I have to, but because Grandpa gave me a chance to prove myself. Maybe you deserve the same opportunity. Under your command? Dad's pride was still fighting. Under my leadership, I corrected. The same leadership that built this company while you were all betting against me. Summer appeared at the door. Sorry to interrupt, but the press is here for the foundation announcement. Perfect timing. I gathered my notes. Take the weekend to think about it. The job offers expire Monday. As they filed out, looking shell-shocked, Mom paused. Your grandfather would be proud. I know, I said, touching his letter in my pocket. He already was. That's why he chose me. After they left, Rocky brought me a coffee. Think they'll take the jobs? Norman will, I predicted. His pride's finally broken. The others, we'll see. You're really giving them a chance? Everyone deserves one shot at redemption. I watched through the window as they walked to their cars. Besides, sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's making them work for you. It's showing them exactly who you've become while they weren't paying attention. The afternoon sun caught the company logo on the wall, casting our motto in golden light, building futures, one opportunity at a time, starting with family, whether they liked it or not. Monday morning arrived with 4 emails in my inbox, 4 acceptances of my job offers. I hadn't expected all of them to swallow their pride, but desperation makes for interesting choices. "They're here," Summer announced, peeking into my office. "All of them. Norman looks like he's about to pass out." "Good." I straightened my desk. "Send them in." They shuffled in like chastened schoolchildren, Norman in an off-the-rack suit, Annalise without her designer handbag, Mom and Dad looking smaller than I'd ever seen them. "Welcome to orientation," I said, gesturing to the chairs. "Rocky will show you to your departments after we review the employment contracts." "Contracts?" Dad's eyebrows shot up. "We need contracts?" "Everyone signs contracts." I slid the documents across the desk, including a non-disclosure agreement about the family situation. "Your positions here are based on merit, not nepotism." "But we are family," Mom protested weakly. "Not at work." I stood up. "Here, I'm your CEO. You'll be evaluated like any other employee with quarterly reviews and performance metrics." Norman picked up his contract, scanning the terms. "This salary is industry standard for entry-level positions." I watched his face fall. "Something wrong?" "No," he mumbled. "It's just less than I expected." "Less than you're used to, you mean?" I leaned forward. "But more than minimum wage, which is what most people start with, plus health benefits and stock options after a year." Annalise dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "What exactly will we be doing?" "Real work." I pulled up their job descriptions on my tablet. "Norman, you'll manage facility maintenance and vendor relationships. Dad, you're in shipping and logistics. Mom, community outreach needs your networking skills. And Annalise, HR needs help with employee engagement programs." "Under supervision, of course," Rocky added from the doorway. "Of course." I watched them sign the contracts one by one. "Now, let me show you what we actually do here." I led them through the office, past rows of developers and designers. Kylie waved from her new workspace, surrounded by monitors displaying complex code. "This is impossible," Norman muttered. "6 months ago, you were in a studio apartment." "No," I corrected him. 6 months ago, I was building this while you thought I was failing. There's a difference." We reached the main conference room just as the morning news started playing on the wall screen. The anchor's voice filled the room. "Breaking news in the tech sector as rising star company announces its latest innovation. CEO Vanessa..." I muted the TV. "That's our new data processing platform, the one Kylie helped develop. We're projecting 8-figure revenues by next quarter." Mom sank into a chair. All this time you could have asked, could have shown interest, could have treated me like I mattered." I turned to face them. "But you didn't, and now here we are." "Here we are," Dad echoed hollowly. "Your department heads are waiting." I checked my watch. "Rocky will show you to your desks. Remember, you're here to work, not to be my family." As they turned to leave, Norman paused. "The house goes on the market Friday." I softened slightly. "But your employment package includes relocation assistance. HR will help you find something within your new budget." "Vanessa," Mom tried one last time. "We really are sorry." "I know." I met her eyes. "But sorry doesn't fix things. Actions do. So prove it, through your work, through your choices, through your respect for what I've built." After Rocky led them away, Summer brought me coffee. That was intense. "It's not over," I said, watching through the glass as Norman fumbled with his new employee badge. "This is just the beginning." "Of what?" "Of them learning what it means to earn something." I picked up Grandpa's letter, rereading his words about showing them what underestimation feels like, and maybe, if they're capable of it, of actual change. My phone buzzed with a text from Patterson. "House listing goes live Friday. Already have interested buyers." "Perfect," I replied, then turned to Summer. "How's Kylie's team doing?" "Crushing it. The new algorithm is exceeding all benchmarks." I smiled, remembering all the times Norman had dismissed my little computer project. "Send the performance reports to all departments," I told her, "including our new employees. Let them see what actual success looks like." Through the glass, I watched my family awkwardly navigating their new reality. Norman learning to operate the copy machine, Annalise trying to look comfortable in her cubicle, Mom and Dad being trained on basic office software. It wasn't revenge. Not exactly. It was education. The kind that only comes from having everything stripped away and having to rebuild from scratch, just like I had done, just like they had forced me to do. And now, finally, it was their turn to learn. The autumn wind rustled through the garden as I stood before Grandpa Rem's grave, placing fresh flowers beside his headstone. The morning dew still clung to the grass, and the sunrise painted the cemetery in soft golden hues. "You should see them now, Grandpa," I whispered, running my fingers over the engraved letters. "They're actually trying." "Miss Vanessa?" Patterson's voice came from behind me. "They're ready for the meeting." Back at the office, I found my family gathered in the conference room, but not as I'd expected. Norman stood at the whiteboard, presenting shipping optimization data with Dad. Mom was reviewing community outreach statistics with Summer, while Annalise organized employee feedback surveys. "Quarterly review time," Rocky announced, sliding performance reports across the table. I picked up Norman's first. His hands trembled slightly as I read. "Interesting," I said, noting the improvements in efficiency. "You've reduced facility costs by 20%. I learned from watching you," he admitted quietly. "How you built something from nothing. I never understood before." "Understanding comes from doing," I replied, moving on to Dad's report. "Shipping complaints down 60%. Impressive." "Your grandfather," Dad cleared his throat. "He would have loved seeing this place, seeing what you've created." "He did see it," I said. "He saw it when it was just a dream everyone else dismissed." Mom's community outreach numbers showed similar improvement. Even Annalise had found her footing in HR, her natural networking skills finally being used for something productive. "So," I closed the last report, "you've all met or exceeded expectations for the quarter." "Does this mean—" Norman started. "Yes, you're all keeping your jobs." I allowed myself a small smile. "And qualifying for the standard performance bonuses." "The house sold yesterday," Annalise said softly. "We've found an apartment. It's small, but it's what you can afford on your salary," I finished, like my studio apartment was. "We were wrong," Mom burst out suddenly. "So wrong about everything, about you." "I know." I stood up, walking to the window. "But that's not why I hired you." "Why did you?" Norman asked. "Because Grandpa Rem taught me something important." I turned back to face them. Success isn't about destroying others. It's about building something meaningful. "Like your foundation." Dad nodded toward the wall where photos of our scholarship recipients hung. "Like family," I corrected. "Real family. The kind that supports each other's dreams instead of crushing them." Rocky appeared with a stack of papers. "The new contracts are ready." "New contracts?" Norman looked nervous. "With raises," I confirmed. "Because you earned them. Not because we're family, but because you proved yourselves capable." "Just like you did," Annalise said quietly. "Just like I had to." I distributed the contracts. "But this time, you had something I never did, a chance to prove yourself." "We don't deserve it," Mom whispered. "Maybe not. But Grandpa gave me a chance I didn't deserve either. He saw potential where everyone else saw failure." Through the window, I could see Kylie leading a coding workshop for our newest scholarship recipients. Young women learning to build their dreams, just like I had. "Sign if you want to," I told my family. "The choice is yours, just like my choices were mine, even when you didn't support them." One by one, they signed. Not out of desperation this time, but with understanding. "The Foundation's annual gala is next week," I said as they finished. "We're announcing our next round of scholarships." "We'll be there," Norman said, then caught himself. "I mean, if we're invited." "You're invited." I picked up Grandpa's letter from my desk. "Because you finally understand what he taught me, that true success isn't about what you have, it's about what you build." "And what you help others build," Dad added, watching the scholarship students through the window. "Exactly." I tucked the letter away, no longer needing its reminder of past hurts. "Now back to work. Those performance metrics won't maintain themselves." As they filed out, Mom lingered. "Vanessa, thank you. Not for the jobs, but for the lesson." "The hardest lessons," I said, remembering my own journey, "are the ones we have to learn for ourselves." She nodded and left, leaving me alone in the office that had once been Grandpa's. Outside, the city sprawled beneath gray skies. But here, surrounded by the empire I'd built from rejection and determination, everything was clear. Revenge might be sweet, but redemption, real, earned redemption, was sweeter. And sometimes, the best way to prove your worth isn't by tearing others down, but by showing them how to build themselves back up, just like Grandpa had shown me.